This is Eric Simpkins with episode 6 of the Venus Rising podcast. Today, we have the illustrious pleasure of being joined with Daniel L. Loeb, longtime scholar, historian, and author on Western esoteric traditions, mystical Christianity, and creator of numerous tarot decks. Today, we are going to be exploring his latest magnum opus, I would call it, accomplishment, which is the Rota Mundi Tarot. And this is a complete box set sold together of the book as well as the deck. And this just came out last Wednesday, about 4 days ago, I believe. Daniel, it is such a pleasure to be joined with you today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So just to start us off quickly at the intro, can you give us a little bit of a background of your history with Western occultism and some of your other books you've written up to this point and where your work has brought you to now as we speak?
Well, I just basically started out with mysticism. I went to school for hypnotherapy, and that's what got me exploring like the subjective and more type of cult type things. And I got into the Kabbalah very early. And over the years, we've explored like all sorts of different religions of every branch of Christianity and Islam and Judaism. And it's all just like my whole journey of trying to put all the pieces of everything together and make sense of like the secret wisdom that people have, expressed, but have been suppressed by the church. So it's been decades of studying to formulate my own ideas and understanding of the universe, which I think that's what mysticism is that it's everybody has their own personal journey, and we're all just trying to figure out all these things and put the pieces together. So the Kabbalah, I think, is directly connected to the tarot. So I've made different tarot decks and written different books of things related to spirituality and my understanding of God and the universe. My first deck was the Tarot of the Most High, which is like a Bible-based deck, and then I went to like Wisdom's Chariot explores like Christian mysticism, and then I went to the Alchemistic Woodcut Tarot, which was the first one published by Schiffer, and then this is the second one, and Schiffer's Red Feather, so it's the same company.
And I gotta say, Schiffer did an amazing job on this publication. Yeah. The quality is outstanding. And I'm curious. I couldn't believe they kept the price so low. Currently from Schiffer Publishing and on Amazon, the deck with the companion book is only $34, $34.99. How did they keep the price so low?
I don't know how they got it so low.
Well,
I mean, that's about what the Alchemistic Woodcut Tarot sold for too. So.
So I've been a student of tarot for about a decade now, and familiar with a few different decks out there, but for the most part did the bulk of my extensive studies with the Paul Foster Case Builders of the Adetum deck. Just to give the viewers, we're going to go into the actual cards and look at some of the imagery and talk about how you designed all this, but I wanted to brush briefly upon the topic of Rosicrucianism, because this is a Rosicrucian deck that you created, a Rosicrucian Arcanum. And Rosicrucianism, in a certain way, lies at the heart and central core of so much of Western Christian mysticism. And yet it's a bit of an enigmatic field to study because there's so much out there, and there's these elusive sort of shadow play, allusions to where the true Rosicrucians are and all this stuff. Off of my personal bookshelf here, we would have source material like The Alchemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz. Yep. That's the Adam McLean version. A little more historical context, we would have things like The Golden Builders by Tobias Churton, The True and Invisible Rosicrucian Order from Paul Foster Case, Secret Doctrine of the Rosicrucians, that was a William Walker Atkinson one. A little more mystical stuff like Karl Eckhart von Schausen. His Cloud Upon the Sanctuary was a highly influential mystical work. Jakob Boehm, Signature of All Things. On the American Rosicrucian front, we have things like the Rosicrucian Christian Lectures by Max Heindel, his highly speculative and a bit imaginative Rosicrucian Cosmo-conception, Freeman B. Dowd, The Way, a textbook for the student of Rosicrucian philosophy. I think that claim is questionable. And then Amorc, Rosicrucian Reflections. I'll be polite and I'll hold my tongue on that one. However, I just wanted to illustrate the jungle filled with minefields of misinformation out there on Rosicrucianism. So when an author like yourself comes along and puts together a Rosicrucian tarot deck, oddly enough, you have to know that you're almost inviting a little bit of skepticism, or even like, I don't know, maybe elitist theosophical lashback from the occult community. And yet, and this is my honest assessment, and yet I think you've truly succeeded, Daniel, in creating an actual authentic Rosicrucian tarot deck.
Thank you.
What was your core guiding I guess influence or desire to create a specifically Rosicrucian deck?
Well, mainly it's tracing the development of the occult tarot through the Rosicrucians, where I'm not exploring all the different branches of Rosicrucianism and what each little order created on their own plane, but focusing on just how Rosicrucianism contributed to the development of the tarot, starting with Eliphas Levi's concepts that he thinks the original Rosicrucians, Rota Mundi, was the tarot as an oracle that they used, and then it being built upon by Papus and Waite and the Golden Dawn and the different Rosicrucian orders that followed until they had the Waite deck or whatever to put all the concepts into a theology hidden within the tarot. And then I want to try and explain what those concepts are, because a lot of times you'll get people that write books on the Waite tarot deck, and they will be, it means that a new love is coming, or you're going on a trip, or some super generic thing, and you're like, well, there's so much symbolism within here that people are missing. So I wanted to try and put it in the framework of how Waite and the early Rosicrucians understood it, and see all the connections that are hidden in there that they didn't really just spill out and reveal to the world because they were all in secret orders and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But just try to focus on the development of it while sticking with the original Rosicrucian philosophy of their 3 manifestos, without branching off into what more modern day people were thinking about it, but what the invisible Rosicrucian order was, which they weren't somebody that was trying to be like, sign up for our club and pay dues to us. They were just presenting out information to share their treasures with the world, so that everybody could be part of the invisible order without being initiated into their club, basically. So that's what I was trying to capture, and exploring what they taught in their first 3 manifestos, which ends with the chemical wedding. I think the chemical wedding is the built up to it, that prior to that, they're just like, this is who we are, we want to do this movement. And then the chemical wedding is their large parable and all their mystical teachings combined, where you explore the different aspects of the world and how alchemy and Kabbalah have mixed with Hermeticism, and how to make sense of all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a personal exploration, which is what like Christian Rosenkreutz does throughout his thing. He's examining the different aspects of Hermeticism and then like Judeo-Christian theologies to find his answers. And even at the end of the chemical wedding, I think he's just barely starting his journey, that it isn't really explained in the book.
And going through some of the images here from your deck, it truly is a genius job you did on this.
Thank you.
I honestly think this is going to be cherished and worked with for years to come. I'd like to show the viewers a few of the images here. So just like on the back of the book here, that is the back image for all of the cards. And as with any deck, that's a bit of a calling card or a seal for the overarching intelligence governing the whole deck. Can you tell us a little bit about that image there?
Well, it says Azoth on it, which is the first and last letters of the Latin, Greek, and Hebrew alphabets. And it's talking about like the Alpha, Omega, the first and the last of like God's contribution to the great work that alchemists have the work and pray analogy that you want to have, like the spirit is part of the alchemical process, that the spirit is the universal solvent that extracts the soul out of the body within alchemy as it progresses, so in order to purify it. So it's just talking about the spiritual, the chemical wedding basically of you're uniting with the divine and your soul is being purified. So that's what Azoth is. And then it has all the different Judeo or all of the Abrahamic faiths with Christianity and Judaism and Islam that all have their beliefs in one God written on there with the Shema and the Shahada of Islam, and then the Credo and Unum Deum of, I believe in one God, from the Latin and Christianity. And then it's also got aspects of Rosicrucianism and the Kabbalah in there. It has on the branches of the cross has the words for pleasure and plague, which are different. The letters of the Hebrew alphabet are arranged in different orders to represent pleasure and plague are good and evil. And it's talking about that when God first created the universe, everything was the balance that we have to figure out and they are the same principle. It's just the extremes that you go to, whether it's a pleasure or plague. And then within it, I have the center is the rose on a cross, which is a Rosicrucian symbol.
Quick close up on that for the viewers.
Yeah.
And that is that's the core symbol of Rosicrucianism, is pinning that rose of the 22 Hebrew letters on the cross.
Yeah, and then it's got the way the Hebrew letters are divided in the Sefer Yetzirah with the 3 mother letters and the 7 double letters, and then the 12 single letters beyond that in the rose. And it's set up that way so that you could use it as to build sigils and stuff for magical purposes and stuff too, which like the Golden Dawn did to make sigils off of their symbol.
Mm-hmm. And to give the viewers a little bit of a glimpse at the imagery, you must have had so much fun creating this deck. I can't imagine. Well, so
I just had fun looking through all those old pictures and stuff because they are all so meaningful and so much symbolism in them.
This one coffee table book I purchased a few years ago by Alexander Rube. It's called Alchemy and Symbolism. Yeah, it's all black and white, of course, but it's nothing but old. There's some color. Nothing but old alchemy images. You can get lost in them. So beautiful to look at. Okay, so the way that you organized the 22 major arcanum is very interesting pictorially. You stuck with the classical Rider-Waite images, and yet you incorporated all of the Sephirotic connecting paths on the tree information for the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, as well as listing the intelligences that are assigned from the Sefer Yetzirah, the paths that they occupy. Give a quick example here of key 14 temperance, which is Tifereth of Yesod, which is the sun acting through the agency of the moon. So right there, with all the major arcanum, you cram a ton of Kabbalistic knowledge into each card. With the suits, oh my God, I love it. I love what you did with this. For instance, this is the King of Wands, which is magnum opus, right there. The Queen of Wands is the chemical wedding itself. The King of Cups is almost the calling card image of the Rosicrucians, Ecclesia Spiritualis, right there. In this image, when I first saw this image on the internet, I think it was through Adam McLean's website about, I guess, 9 years ago. That was something I instantly had to get a poster of on my wall because
Yeah.
that image, more than anything else, is the calling card of the Rosicrucians. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's like the invisible college, and it shows them going out and rescuing people with Noah's Ark in the background and the hand of God supporting them. But I mean, they still are combined like within a tower, which in the original Rosicrucians met in the House of the Holy Spirit, I think is what they called it. But
and
you
it's
know,
it's a winged little moving city that of course can descend and ascend from heaven. The doors open and close to let people in and shut them out.
Yeah, and it could be anywhere and nowhere, you know, so that
Yes. And to show a few more images, this is the King of Cups, the kingdom of God. We have some cube of space depictions there with the Hebrew letters. What you decided to do with the suit of pentacles, the earth suit, was I don't know why no one thought to do this before. It seems very intuitive, but you kept the suit of earth pentacles 1 through 10 purely tree of life Kabbalistic. So for instance, path of salvation is the 1 of pentacles, which is that central pillar, that middle path on the tree of life. And from there, the whole thing is relational according to the tree of life as it regards the numerical value. Another good example here would be the 7 of pentacles, the lampstands. We can see what you did there with the arrangement of the Sephiroth. There's one thing I've been scratching my brain over a bit because I don't know how you thought of this, and I'd like to know your creative process behind some of these arrangements. For instance, in a few of the page cards, there's this brilliant idea of that elemental suit actually being depicted as a combination of major arcana. For instance, here we have the lover's journey. Yeah. And that's depicting the interaction of the masculine, the feminine, and the angelic throughout the tarot. Here we have the Ace of Cups, which is Solve et Coagula. So it's interesting because you approach this topic of Rosicrucianism and tarot and Hebrew Kabbalah and Christian mysticism from an extremely scholarly approach. And yet when it comes to the choices of images and some of these arrangements, I can tell it's almost like purely intuitive, spiritually guided.
Yeah.
What were some of your fun moments in choice imagery when you were designing this that you can recall?
Well, I think that everything in tarot related is combining, you know, like your feminine and masculine, which the feminine I would think is more of like your sea of the subconscious, and your masculine is, you know, like caveman rah, rah, thinking of these are the facts of reality or whatever. So it's a mixture of putting your analytical thought and your subjective thought together. And I mean, that's what I think a tarot reading is. And that's how, that's what I think is a good purpose of tarot reading. You know, if nothing else, as a meditative form, it forces you to use intuitive impressions from the cards and the spread, and then to use your analytical mind to formulate an interpretation and put together abstract information within a puzzle, and then come up with an analogy that you could fit into, you know, the reality. So within it, there's a lot of information from, you know, the occult and different structures in the Kabbalah and different philosophies, but then everything is still a personal journey and your response to the images and how you understand it. You know, of course, the original artists have what they meant by the symbolism when they put it together, but all of us recognize things and transform it, you know, based on the situation that we're looking at, which is what's so great about the tarot, is that you can pull out a card and it can have a different meaning every single time that you're doing a reading based on the question of the reading and where it is in the spread. And you'll pay attention to different aspects of the the symbolism. So putting the deck together was a lot like doing tarot readings, where I just have all this facts and knowledge in my mind, and then all these emotions and feelings that all get stuffed together and be like, how can you arrange that and what makes the most sense? And I'm not saying that my way is the only way or this is the right way, but what I want to show is that everybody should look at these systems and be able to pull out what's meaningful to you and find the connections and find things that I didn't see, or that any of the past mystics or any, name or author or something in the past has come. I mean, the point is not to be a disciple of them, but to become a peer of them by figuring it out for yourself and finding things that are meaningful to you as you unlock the mysteries, because what God reveals to each person is different than, everybody all at once. That we all, each have our own journeys. We learn life experiences by what we experience, and it's not going to be the same life as our neighbor or family members even. I mean, what I've experienced, the lives of my kids are nothing like when I grew up. Everything is completely unique, and we're all just finding our way in the world and trying to make sense of, the vast knowledge and information within the universe.
That's right. And you touched on something there about the individual approach and application, with all of us towards any sort of esoteric or occult work. And I couldn't help but be overcome with the impression as I was acquainting myself with the images in your deck and reading through this masterful book. I'm not being, it's not flattery there. The amount of information you poured into this companion work it's a bit of a standalone magnum opus, no exaggeration. I found myself overcome with this feeling of what you've created here is that, unlike most tarot decks out there, this companion set here of the deck in the book is almost like I don't know, like a Franz Barden-ish self-initiation into Hermetics kind of complete system. Because yeah, this book alone, now there's dozens of books on my bookshelf, of course. If people are like, oh, I'm interested in Kabbalah, I'm like, okay, here's a stack of books,
Yeah.
But the amount of information you condensed into this regarding Hebrew Kabbalah, regarding Hermetic tradition, how it relates to tarot and all of that, but specifically as well, the emphasis on Christianity.
Yeah.
That was something I find tremendously, tremendously refreshing, because at the core, at the anchor of the Rosicrucians was Christianity, mystical Christianity, albeit, yes. But as I was reading through your text here, at one point I had to say, okay, I can't just read this book by itself. I'm grabbing a Bible and I'm grabbing Godwin's Kabbalistic Encyclopedia as reference material, and I'm stopping and pausing between pages to bring up all the scriptures you're referencing and pondering the relationship there with regards to alchemy and Kabbalah and everything you go into. Is it safe to say that part of a maybe overarching spirit or back burner of your mind intention with this work is to remind parts of the occult community that Christianity and biblical scholarship is foundational? Did that cross your mind? Because I picked that up. I wasn't sure if it was intended.
Well, I think that within the occult, it has always been, and that slowly got weeded out as the occult progressed. Like Agrippa and stuff was a Christian, like all of the early occultists were, and it just slowly like filtered out somewhat in modern occultists. But it's always been there, and I think that what the Rosicrucians were doing was living in a time when, they were still within the Reformation and living in a Lutheran country, but then within their works, they said that they recognized Rome as their Christian head, even though they were living in a Protestant country. but they also say that they thought the Pope was the Antichrist. So, they're trying to find out where they are. And the main thing about Christianity is that Jesus was not part of a mainstream church, and he never taught everybody, you need to join this thing and follow this dogma. He was always talking about, and all the disciples were talking about, a personal relationship with God, which forms with the Holy Spirit, which parallels everything in alchemy and Kabbalah and everything. And it's just aspects of the secrets of Christianity that were lost because people get into, no, you have to follow the mainstream church. Here's a dogma. This is the definition of this. But that's not what the New Testament is about. The New Testament is about get a personal relationship with God that's different from the dogma. And when you have this relationship, the rest of the people are probably going to want to kill you. So you got to keep it secret and stuff. So, I mean, Jesus did get killed by the mainstream religions and the government of his day. But
I think Socrates did too. That's a bit of a theme in Western history.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to it. You got the better beliefs are the things that you hold that is probably different than the rest of society, because what's separated is what is holy, so. But that's what I was trying to do, is not like make a statement about this Christians, wherever this stuff arranged from, but just reminding the mystical aspects of it that have been kind of lost and buried within denominations and stuff, which the Rosicrucians, that's what they were about, is we're a secret order of uniting with the female divine spirit to unfold the treasures of God that aren't part of any government that existed at the time. And they kept their stuff secret because they would have been martyred for, being heretics.
Yeah, those concepts of Sophia and the Shekinah.
Yeah.
And they seem to have been rejected quite a bit in the last few hundred years.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a certain, I want to say it's about midway through your companion book here, you go very in depth to the alchemical operations of the Renaissance Rosicrucians. I'm just going to give a little bit of a screenshot here. This is fractional distillation.
Yeah.
So in addition to purely tarot, purely Kabbalah, purely mystical theology, you explore pretty much all the facets that are entwined within Rosicrucianism. How did you incorporate the alchemy concepts into your deck specifically? I can think of a few cards that, of course, are purely alchemical, but what was that sort of a central focus on parts of it, where at times you're juggling Kabbalah, juggling mystical Christianity, juggling the historical depictions versus the alchemical process?
Yeah, well, alchemy, I think, is throughout the Rider-Waite deck, is he focuses more on alchemy than the Kabbalah, I would think, but Kabbalah is right in there. I mean, they are paralleled. The Rosicrucians, it would seem like the chemical wedding is more on alchemy than Kabbalah, but their other manifestos mentioned that they were studying the Kabbalah, and you could tell from like their symbols and stuff that comes from Heinrich Kumrath and stuff that they were into the Kabbalah equally. So I was just trying to put the concepts together and make it understandable. And in order to do that, you really have to understand how alchemy works, because alchemy, as far as like the spiritual alchemy, is a metaphor of the physical processes. And if you have no idea about the physical processes, then you're like, yeah, the spirit combines with the sulfur and makes the salt, and you could say it means body, mind, and spirit, but without actually seeing it on how you extract the essential oil out of a plant and seeing that this is the purification process. and it's exploring nature of like creation to understand, you know, the microcosm, the macrocosm of understanding the bigger picture by exploring the small aspects. Like if you got those plants behind you and
Mm-hmm.
you suck the essential oil out of them and turn them into a stone, you know, then you could get a metaphor and a process of what you're doing with your soul and how everything in the world works, you know. I mean, it's all, and I think it's all back to Kabbalah and going back to the first book of Genesis of, and he divided the waters, which mime is, you know, they have in the Sivret Shara, they have the three mother letters of primordial air, fire, and water. So you
Mm-hmm.
have mime is water, and then in order to divide the waters, they add the letter shin to the mime to make shemayim for heaven, which is adding fire to water, which in like the alchemical process would evaporate it and turn it into air, which represents the chemical wedding of the spirit extracting the soul out of the physical body or whatever. So, I mean, all this stuff is so related. And if you're looking at the symbolism based on, you know, concrete principles that you prove through science of alchemy is what, you know, there it's an early science, then, you know, it helps you to understand the processes. The same thing with the Kabbalistic tree of life. It's just a graph to help you trying to put the pieces together. And that's why I didn't just stick with the Golden Dawn's version of the Kabbalah, but I put the Isaac Luria version, and then I made the cube that shows this is what the Sefer Yetzirah thought, that it was God's using his name to seal the universe in 6 directions. So the Kabbalah isn't just one symbol that you memorize some stuff at, but it's a bunch of principles, and you could understand it by these different graphs or anything on whatever is useful to you, so that you could pull substance out of it, you know, by using your analytical aspects of your mind to contemplate abstract subjective information.
Well said, well said. And I think part of that, that importance that you mentioned there, the importance of the physical operations with understanding the physical alchemy to even grasp what's happening there with us spiritually. And maybe that's a time specific phenomenon there. If I think of with the 20th century in specific, how, modern day scientific age we live in, psychology went this way and chemistry went that way.
Yeah.
Whereas, the brilliance of the Renaissance mystics and the Rosicrucians was that as above, so below. There is no separation of these, and of course,
Yeah.
that's within Kabbalah as well. To understand the one is to understand the other, and the way you can dance around all of these symbol sets and the interactions is also where tarot comes in, because having that set of interrelational pictorial images is not only sort of a pneumatic device, for memory and conception, but also for relational interactions as well. Um, I I can honestly say I'm going to be coming back to this companion book of yours, because unlike any other tarot companion book out there, like I said, this is almost a complete course in and of itself of Rosicrucian mysticism. You did such a fantastic job on this. One question I am curious, just as a fellow esotericist and a father myself, I have 2 young boys. Over the years, pouring yourself into Western mysticism and esotericism, how have you juggled, the fact of having, let's say, a professional life, which thinks all this stuff is weird and creepy
Yeah.
or whatever, and, having a married life and having a fatherly life? How have you sort of approached the whole fact that you are a full-fledged occultist, I guess, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the part of the occult, is that you got to keep the occult secret still,
Oh,
but
damn it. That's your answer?
yeah,
Dang.
it's not our entire lives. I mean, uh, that's why I wrote under DW Prudence for years, because I was in the Air Force and I had to have a job that required a secret security clearance. And then I went into like federal law enforcement after that, where they do background investigations and stuff on you. And you got to recognize that the world is still going to frown upon that. And if you show them that you're a occultist, there's going to be you're going to face prejudice and things like that. So that's why I wrote under that until now I'm retired and I'm not working at those jobs that require secret security clearances anymore.
Congratulations, you made it, Daniel. And I saw that you came out with this new work under your actual name, Daniel E. Loeb. That's an announcement. It's like, okay, you made it. Now you can be a full-time author.
Yeah. But I'm still not telling everybody on all the different aspects of my life that, hey, I write the occult books and I make tarot cards and stuff. You keep different aspects of yourself, occult or secret, and share with what people, need as you're progressing through whatever the situations are. Because I mean, some of the people are not going to be open to it, but I could have those facets of my life, interact with them at whatever we have to do there, but then have the deeper philosophical, mystical conversations with the people that, are into it and ready for it, because everyone's at their different stage of development, and you can't go and find somebody that is nowhere near interested or, has some super basic plans of, I'm going to get off work and come and drink a beer while I watch TV and be like, hey, let me tell you about
sure.
Give us some gigantic explanation of the universe unfolded by
that'd be popular in the police enforcement.
Yeah, so you gotta keep still recognize that it is still the occult, and that people will still think that you're a heretic and stuff. If you show that to Christians or anybody else, they'll be like, no, that's the devil, or that you're gonna face criticism from people. So everything is still about being a cult and watching who you reveal your mysteries to, just like Jesus did, that he taught in parables when he was out in public, but then taught his disciples the truth when he was in private. And because everything's in parables, that's why there's so much disagreements among denominations and everything, because they don't understand what he was talking about, because they're missing the history of it and what he shared on the inside and the esoteric part.
And and I can attest to that even too in some of the Freemasonry lodges. It's very common for a large number of people in attendance and lodge to not necessarily have much interest per se in the occult. Some people are there for patriotic reasons, the history. Some people are there for the buddy system. Some people are there for access to movers and shakers and influential business people and all that. Of course, you're exposed to a lot of esoteric symbolism, but when it comes to the diehard, like esoteric, junkies, we find each other. We find each other. Yeah. And my kids have long since just accepted Daddy's a weirdo. So, but again, though, I honestly think that your work here, the book in specific, the Rota Mundi Tarot, Rosicrucian Arcanum companion book, if I were to ever introduce a Christian who knows nothing about Western esotericism to anything, I'm being honest here, I would probably give him this. This is like the most Christianly centered approach to all of the Rosicrucian mysteries. And I don't know, on a personal level, the reason I keep coming back to stressing that, Daniel, it's a bit of a personal reason for me. My father was a Southern Baptist pastor. And, so I grew up knowing the Bible before I knew anything else. And he passed when I was 7 years old. It was 1989. And, so I grew up without a father, as anyone who has done so can equate, they can understand the kind of difficulty, especially with teenagehood there. But my father was a good man, and I always looked up to him. And I remember when I poured myself into Western occultism in my late 20s, I remember being slightly conflicted in my spirit, even talking to God about things. And what would my father think? What would my father think? What would my father think? And when it comes to the purely Hebraic, Kabbalistic aspect, as well as the Sophianic aspects of Hermeticism, it's specifically stuff like this that unites them, that this is not in any way anti-Christian. In fact, it's more Christian than Christianity is how I feel.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do, is unite all the different principles and kind of, separate things from dogma. I think that's the negative aspect of any part of Christianity, is that you give that to a Christian, they could start reading it and they'll go, oh, this is great, until they come to some part that hits their bias and like, that is from the devil. And then they'll turn
Solomonic
off
stuff with the cleap-offs and all that.
And they won't read the rest of it. But I mean, all of it, there isn't a right way. There is just, God revealing himself to the different prophets and then putting it in their own words and trying to understand how they understand God. And that's what the Kabbalists are trying to do. That's what the alchemists are trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I want people to see that they should be trying to do. And I'm not trying to write a book that's, it's why there's a lot of meaning. If you look up each of the cards, I have some of them, like especially the first 32 have, pages of all these different aspects of meaning that is within the card, but I'm never saying this is what the card means, where a lot of the books, that people write on the tarot, it's only a quick explanation that says death means rebirth, memorize that, but I try to explore it and get people to think of, you're not memorizing a book answer, but you're just exploring all kinds of different concepts and symbolism to find out what it means to you. So I think that I put a lot of maybe answers into the book and meaning to the cards, but it's not just a book of definitions of this is the card meaning, that if you just look at this card and like, what's this mean? And you open up my book, it's not going to give you a blank answer, but I'm trying to have people find out for themselves, because that's how they're going to learn how to read tarot, is extract it from your intuition. Like, what's this card mean? Like, I don't know. What's it mean to you?
And I believe you have a background in psychology as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That just reminded me. I don't know. What does it mean to you? Yeah.
I mean, that's how a lot of this stuff is. Everybody has their own intuition, where when they come to a tarot reading, they probably know the answer intuitively already. And they're like, does this person like me, or should I do this at work? And you could just ask them, like, I don't know, do you think that they do? And like, yes. And like, why do you think that? And they can give you all kinds of explanations, where I was promoted before this person and they did, and like, well, yeah. And then you could look at the tarot and then add more, more information to, fill in the blanks that are missing within what's already known. But you shouldn't only try and replace, the reality with only subjective information and be like, this is the answer, when it's supposed to be brainstorming of figuring out, you have this much data. Now let's look at that metaphorically against this abstract information of possibilities and try and determine what's a common sense, logical step that you could take that's going to help you reach your goal that you're setting, and then you pull out a card and it might represent something that this could be good or bad. And you're like, yeah, you might have an obstacle, and it'll show you something that you didn't even think of when you're making your plan. And like, well, what happens if you encounter this situation and you develop a plan? Well, if I'm causing people to feel jealous or something, then I need to address that by, incorporating them and bringing them into the project so that they get buy-in and have them be supporting instead of challenging me, where it's all psychological principles, and you're just trying to brainstorm solutions. And the more background information that you have on the situation, the easier it's going to be to interpret the information. I mean, I don't believe psychics are like on the movie Poltergeist or something, where he's like, oh, I'm answering her with my mind and she doesn't hear, and she's like, I don't like trick answers, but But they give the idea that psychics have all these magic powers, but it's just using your psyche, that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Yes.
where the complexity of the toolkit, like tarot and Kabbalah in specific, like you're saying, it's like, okay, well, maybe this is the answer, or if you're coming to a question with a preconceived, made up answer that you're not allowing yourself to see, well, then okay,
Yeah.
once you catch a glimpse of that answer, there's the relational aspects of why and how and all that,
Yeah.
which is where Kabbalah comes in as sort of a self-referential toolkit it's really conceptual is what it is. It's a conceptual approach to the complexities of reality in a certain way.
Yeah, and arranging the information,
Mm-hmm.
and you could have your intuitive thoughts, but until you have it on paper or whatever, it doesn't make sense or whatever. But once you start being like, how does this compare to this card in this position? And it forces you to extract different aspects of it that you weren't going to think of otherwise. And it's a process of like meditation to comprehend all of the different, abstract data and put the pieces of the puzzle together and be like, oh, wow, that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of just like a way of brainstorming and try to get you to have epiphanies by contemplating things until you find an answer that you didn't know was in you.
That's right. So Daniel, in addition to authoring books on the topic and creating these gorgeous, gorgeous tarot decks, do you also do any kind of like workshops or even small community-based educational forums of any kind? Or
I was doing that like right after I retired, but then COVID hit, so all the stores were closed, so I couldn't be doing it. So I'm starting to get back into like psychic fairs and selling my books, and then doing tarot readings, which I'll sell a lot of like divination tools. And my purpose is not to do like a paper fortune teller that you're going to marry Jimmy Smith and live in a green house, but I want to help people I want to excite people and empower them to use the oracles and to explore their own spirituality. I'm not trying to be a guru of being like, I have the answers, memorize my material, but I want to be like, hey, this is what I found works for me. And I'd like you to look at it and see if it could work for you, because I found it to be beneficial. I just want to share the things that I've learned and help people along their own path, recognizing that their path is not going to be exactly as my path was, because we all have our own paths, which in there, I think I have a metaphor of Waite shows the mountain in the different cards, all from different angles, that we are all starting our spiritual journeys from different places.
Yes.
Heading towards the same mountain, but we see it from different angles, and it might be steeper on one side or easier on one side. And it just is going to be where we're at, that we have to solve our own issues and process the information, the universe on our own, so that's what I'm trying to do, is show how I've done it, which is just like one of many mystics throughout the years. And I want to empower people to be like, yeah, you are just a mystic, just like Isaac Luria or me, or, the authors of the Sefer Yetzirah or anything else. We're just trying to build our own relationship with the divine and understand the universe and put the pieces together, while still interacting in the world and having regular jobs that we have to keep all this occult stuff secret from, because they don't understand it, but we could be applying our psychological principles and spiritual things that we've learned to help us do with our neighbors, even if they don't understand where we're coming from.
Well said, well said. And truly the work itself is beyond us, and the vastness of the inheritance of the lineages and the traditions. Like you said, it is something we're all contributing to and participating in. No one technically owns any of it, and we have to keep that in mind as we're approaching it too, because it truly has a life of its own that we're simply briefly interfacing with. Well, I think you have succeeded in a tremendous accomplishment with this
Thank you.
deck here, Daniel. You did an amazing job.
Thank you.
I would encourage anyone who's watching to check out it's again a single set, a nice box set of the book and the tarot deck together, only $35. I don't know if that price will stay. It might go up in time. Who knows with the economy? But it's an amazing work you did. Daniel, how can people reach out to you if they want to inquire more or follow your work in the future?
Well, my website is dwprudence.com. Oh, no, it's not. It's dwellwithprudence.com.
Dwell with Prudence. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll attach a link, of course.
Yeah. And then I'm on Facebook. People could friend me on Facebook or send me messages or email me. I think I got my email on my website of dwellwithprudence.com. And then I'll post whenever I'm at events. And I think I will be in Clinton, Iowa this month for a psychic fair.
Okay.
So I'll post what I have. I'm going to just try to do stuff, psychic fairs, like once a month in my area or whatever is drivable for me.
Okay.
And then
what state do you hail in, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm in Iowa.
You're in Iowa. Okay. Okay.
So Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, anywhere around there, whatever is drivable is what
Nice.
I'm looking at.
All right, awesome. Well, Daniel, it's been such a pleasure having you, and thank you for this contribution to the spiritual community. The Rota Mundi Tarot, a Rosicrucian Arcanum, truly is an accomplishment, and I look forward to following your work in the future here.
Thank you.
All right,
I
take care.
appreciate